Hello, everybody. Today we're talking about opposition and the legacy of the New Deal. Obviously, not everybody is going to be thrilled about the things that are going on. We should learn about those, and then we'll also talk about, the lasting impacts and kind of the overall idea of what the New Deal did for us. So our objective question today is kind of a 2-for-1 question. What opposition did the New Deal have, and what legacy did it leave behind? I'm going to start with a great quote by FDR here. I see 1/3 of a nation ill-housed, ill-clad, ill-nourished. The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. It is whether we provide enough for those who have too little. I decided to include this because this is a quintessential idea of FDR. The idea that it's not about the people who are doing the best in our country helping them. Instead, it's helping the people who can't help themselves or don't have enough. So a great kind of quote to kind of kick off his second New Deal that's going to be implemented upon his reelection. Now, opposition to the New Deal and FDR in general is going to come from the right and the left. So right, of course, being Republicans and left being Democrats. Roosevelt's own party does have some issues with the New Deal. The right believe that the New Deal does too much. They think that it's creating too powerful of a government, too big of a government. They think that it's giving out too much stuff. It's giving out direct aid. It's going to build like a dependent community. They're afraid of that. So the Republicans believe that the New Deal does too much. In between, we have some moderate Democrats and some moderate Republicans that actually join together to form the American Liberty League. And this is going to be basically just a formal opposition to the New Deal. And it's not a political party. It's more like kind of a club that shows some bipartisan alignment in the idea that the New Deal is, not for Americans. The American Liberty League, their biggest issue is that the New Deal has overstepped state rights and that the federal government has become too powerful in that manner. And so the right believes that the New Deal's done too much. The American Liberty League believes that it's overstepped its bounds over states. And there are some on the extreme left that actually believe that the New Deal didn't do enough, that we haven't had the growth that we should have, that if the New Deal was supposed to be effective, it would have already been effective, that the economy hasn't recovered as quickly as we wanted it to, and we should be doing more, right? So some, a spectrum of opinions when it comes to opposing the New Deal. One of the most famous persons who opposed the New Deal is this man right here named Huey Long. Huey Long was the governor of Louisiana, very outspoken. He was a great, passionate speaker, very popular if you liked him. If you didn't like him, you absolutely could not stand him. He was very polarizing. And he comes up with a plan called the Share Our Wealth Plan. All right, so the Share Our Wealth Plan, very simple. What we're going to do is we're going to ridiculously tax the wealthy people. We're going to jack those tax rates up. We're going to tax them for almost everything they have and generate a ton of money. With this money, we're going to be able to provide everybody with a house, a salary, food, a free education, and just make sure that absolutely every single person is taken care of. The motto of this plan is the Every Man a King plan. The idea that we're going to take money from the wealthy and we're going to redistribute it so absolutely everybody has everything they need. He wanted everyone to be able to have a radio and a car, and no matter what your, profession or what your job, or even if you worked, everybody should have these things, Huey Long believed. And he actually gains a lot of momentum. People during this time, still recovering from the Great Depression, not really seeing the effects they wanted to with the New Deal. They're willing to go a little bit more extreme, a little bit more farther down the spectrum of that, that left-leaning spectrum, kind of towards socialism and that kind of area, right? If you pay attention to the media, we've seen this kind of idea before. right? So Huey Long gains a lot of popularity, and he decides he might run against FDR for president. And he does have a strong following. Now, would he have defeated FDR? It's hard to say. He did have a lot of, power behind him. FDR, asked the FBI, the IRS to look into Huey Long because he seems a little sketchy. But FDR could rest easy because, unfortunately for Huey Long, he was actually assassinated. He was assassinated in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in the Capitol building. He was assassinated by a doctor who allegedly shot him once in the abdomen. And then Huey Long's bodyguards responded by shooting the assassin 61 times. So that's interesting. There's a little bit of conspiracy around this assassination. It does seem a little sketchy. The details are slightly skewed depending on what source you're looking at. Some people claim that the assassin, a guy named Weiss, actually didn't even have a gun. He didn't even bring a gun. He didn't shoot a gun. And that was actually one of the bodyguard's stray bullets, like a ricochet that actually hit and killed Huey Long. But as I mentioned, unfortunately for Huey Long, he's going to die 2 days after that from complications of the gunshot wound and infection. And, he kind of pulls himself out there. So FDR can rest a little easy, right? His number one opponent has, been eliminated. If you have access to the PowerPoint, this is a great video. It's 3.5 minutes long. Feel free to watch the first 30 seconds or so. It shows Huey Long and how effective he is at speaking to crowds and how effective he is as an orator. More problems with the New Deal. The New Deal overall, and this is obviously a generalization, but for the most part favors these large industries and business, right? So like railroad, farming, stuff like that. Some of the smaller industries are going to be overlooked and not really helped much. Small farmers are going to be extremely disadvantaged by some elements of the New Deal, specifically the AAA. Remember the AAA is going to pay farmers to not produce, which means they're using less land, which means tenant farmers, oftentimes minorities, are going to be, basically displaced because we no longer need them. So we have over 100,000 African American farmers who are now put out of work and have to abandon farming as a profession. So even more people put out of work because of that. And the New Deal also completely ignores domestic workers. So we're talking about people who work inside other people's homes, maids, cooks, things like this. Most of the time, those are women. Most of the time, those are minorities as well. So they're going to be disadvantaged by the New Deal. Other issues with the New Deal is that local agencies are going to be the ones who are responsible for administering some of the aid that they're receiving. So the federal government, and this is just an example, right, will cut a check to each single state, right? So North Carolina gets their check and they say, okay, cool. And they take that check and they divide it up to each one of the little counties, right? And then the counties has to decide how they're going to distribute the wealth. Well, in the South especially, you better believe that aid is going to the white people and not the black people. And this is obviously a generalization, right? But for the most part, minorities are going to be very disadvantaged by that element as well, especially in the South. And then, of course, probably the most important issue with the New Deal is the court packing scheme, right? So FDR comes up with this bill. And if the bill passes through Congress, the idea is that if a Supreme Court justice, has served 10 years and doesn't retire within 6 months after reaching the age of 70, the president can appoint an additional judge. All right, so basically it's aging out Supreme Court justices that are nominated for life. And at this point in history, when this bill is introduced, when FDR introduces this bill, we had 4 justices who were already in their 70s and 2 more who were in their late 60s. So if this bill gets passed, very, very quickly, FDR is going to be able to appoint 6 Supreme Court justices. Now remember, the president's, one of his, most long-lasting, positions of power is nominating the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court justices are nominated for life. They serve for decades, sometimes, and this is going to, FDR is going to pick people who favor what he wants them to do. And it's going to continue on this New Deal philosophy, this left-wing mindset in the Supreme Court for decades to come. So opponents of FDR really, really hate this plan. They see it as a way of FDR kind of, stepping around checks and balances, and a lot of people are going to have an issue with this. We have some political cartoons we can look at real quick. Here we see Uncle Sam kind of surprised because we've got this little ventriloquist dummies, the packed court, all saying yes. And FDR, of course, is the person, puppeteering those people. Here we see some more. And I'm going to kind of speed up so we can get through. Here we go. Government reorganization, Supreme Court revision. FDR is quickly, step by step, becoming closer and closer to a dictator. Right? Constitution of the United States, canceled by FDR. Right? It's just showing FDR as being too powerful, too overreaching, and criticizing how much power he's trying to get. The impact of the New Deal. The New Deal is going to give people hope. Right? This is a fresh new start. Happy days are here again, supposedly, right? The fireside chats are breaking everything down, explaining things to us, giving us, the strength to move on. So that's good. It's also the first major attempt that the government is going to have for taking responsibility of the economy and the people. All right, so this is a huge transition in the mindset of Americans, that the government is, before in the 1920s and before that, we thought, the government is, supposed to govern and we're supposed to run the economy and people are supposed to take care of themselves. But that changes with the New Deal and FDR. It's now an American mindset that it's the government's job to, at some level, regulate the economy, right, and also take care of people who need to be taken care of. Another huge element FDR is going to introduce is deficit spending. Deficit spending means you're spending money you don't have. Instead of balancing a budget and using the money you have when you have it, FDR is just going to start borrowing money as a way to pay for some of the things that he argues he absolutely needs. Now, when it comes to like relief and stuff, this is necessary. People need things and, you got to bring it from somewhere. And if people are unemployed, you can't tax them. Right, so deficit spending is going to be a very controversial thing that FDR is going to introduce for us, and also the welfare programs. Some formal criticism, big government, the idea that the government's involved in way too much. Conservatives aren't going to like that. And then, of course, also deficit spending. It's not great for a country to be in a lot of debt, obviously. It's better to not be in debt, and that's a problem that a lot of people have. Here's some more political cartoons, okay. And here we go, our last slide, the legacy of the New Deal. As I mentioned before, the government's really going to step up during this time period, and it's going to actually, maintain pretty involved as we move forward. The government controls a lot more of the lives of Americans. It looks out for people and stuff like that. A lot of the programs that are instituted in the New Deal and under FDR are still present today. The Social Security, of course, being the one that immediately comes to mind. There are some other housing and economic policies that are still around. And then lastly, people always ask, was the New Deal successful? Well, kind of, right? Did it help people? Absolutely. Did it provide direct relief that helped people improve their lives during the Great Depression? 100%. Did it end the Great Depression? Absolutely not. All right. There were some pros and cons to the New Deal, 100%, and the New Deal does not end the Great Depression. All right. What ends the Great Depression for the United States and other countries is World War II. We're not going to see a healthy economy back to the way it was before the Great Depression until, World War II and after World War II as we're recovering. So, was the New Deal effective? Yes. Did it end the Great Depression? No. It simply didn't have the time to do that. All right, so that is opposition to and the legacy of the New Deal. Make sure to answer your objective questions, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.